But I'm sure what you're desperate to know right now is what the most chronically wrong woman in Hollywood thinks of the whole Don Lemon saga. A woman who is proof that wisdom does not come with age. Take it away, Hanoi Jane.
Don Lemon is a professional journalist. He and his producer were doing their job. Nothing more, nothing less. And he's been arrested. And they'll make up all kinds of defamatory things to say about him. That's what they're doing. This is how autocrats act. We can't fall for it. We have to speak up. When a red line is crossed like this, we cannot be silent.
Let's bring in Newsweek's senior editor-at-large and Article 3 Project Senior Counsel, Josh Hammer. Josh, Jane Fonda says this is authoritarian and a breach of the First Amendment.
So I know Don Lemon. My husband created CNN, and I will fight for their right to speak, which is guaranteed in our Constitution. They arrested the wrong Don.
Josh, what's your response to those pearls of wisdom from Jane Fonda?
Yeah, Rita, I literally can't think of a greater endorsement of Pam Bondi and the DOJ issuing an arrest warrant for Don Lemon than Hanoi Jane herself coming out opposed to it. I mean, what an absolutely mesmerizing endorsement for this current prosecution. Look, this notion that journalists in America have a higher First Amendment protection than most Americans is a common misconception. Look, I am a lawyer. I'm also a journalist. My First Amendment rights are the exact same as literally any other American in the country. Journalists have no higher or any different degree of First Amendment protection. The First Amendment does indeed protect your right to stand on a public property, stand on a sidewalk, stand in a public square. You can hold up your dumb Ford Foundation, Tide Foundation, stupid open boroughs, George Soros Fund sign, abolish ICE, DHS is fascist, arrest the orange man, whatever. Who gives a crap? You can do that. Here's what you can't do. You can't trespass private property. And even more than that, we have federal statutes on the books that specifically criminalize doing this when it comes to a house of worship. This is back in the good old days, back when there was bipartisan agreement that, speaking of the First Amendment, Hanoi Jane, you know what else is there? Oh, yeah, the free exercise of religion. And back in the 1990s, back when Democrats were still relatively sane, you had the Bill Clinton-led Democrats lead this bipartisan charge to pass the FACE Act, a 1994 statute that specifically criminalizes doing exactly what Don Lemon and his bunch of not-so-merry left-wing hooligans did in St. Paul, Minnesota a few Sundays ago. You can't disrupt a house of worship there. Frankly, Rita, we've heard how many times in the past few years this refrain from Joe Biden, Merrick Garland, and the rest of what I used to call the Democrat lawfare complex. How many times do we hear this refrain that no one is above the law? I agree with that statement. No one is above the law. The question is Don Lemon above the law? Pam Bondi and Donald Trump say no. They're totally correct on that.
Well, Hollywood says he is. He's getting standing ovations from Hollywood these days. Ridiculous stuff. We've got another Democrat media narrative that has come undone, Josh, by facts and footage. And that's this characterisation of Alex Pretty, who was shot dead in a scuffle with federal officers in Minneapolis. We had CNN claim this man was perfect. They use that word, perfect man, what you want your son to grow up to be, who you want your daughter to marry. And every Democrat politician has pushed that narrative, but then footage emerged of his antics at other recent violent protests. Let's have a look at this viral clip of Democrat Elizabeth Warren talking about Pretty with that unearthed footage playing.
Caring for people was at the core of who he was. He was incapable of causing harm. Alex carried patience, compassion, and calm as a steady light within him. Even at the very end, that light was there. I recognized his familiar stillness and signature calm composure.
As is often the case with these manufactured outrages, the truth is kind of lost in the hysteria. But I wonder how many are reassessing the perception of what happened with footage like that.
Yeah, nothing says composure like the video that we just saw, like literally kicking a federal vehicle, of yelling, spitting in the face of officers there. Nothing says composure, Elizabeth Warren. Nothing says composure, Pocahontas, like that video right there. How many times does the left do this, where they find someone? I think back to Kilmar Abrego Garcia, this MS-13 connected human trafficker, this sex offender, the Maryland man, the quintessential Maryland man there. He's out there in a white t-shirt mowing his lawn there. That's who you should be when you grow up there. You should be the Maryland man, Kilmar Abrego Garcia. You should be Alex Preddy, who's full of composure there. Heck, why don't you go back to the Washington Post from about 7 or 8 years ago? Why don't we try to be an austere religious scholar, kind of like Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, the head of ISIS there? The hits just keep on coming right there. But look, we're being a little tongue-in-cheek here. Look, the reality is a young man died. And he died because, it is very simple, he died because Democrats did not play along. If Tim Walz and Jacob Fry and Ilhan Omar and Keith Ellison and the rest of the Minnesota Democrats had just said, okay, you know what? Federal law is supreme. We understand the Supremacy Clause. We understand the Constitution. Come in here, arrest your criminal aliens. If they had done that, Rita, none of this would have happened. The reason that Renee Good and the reason that Alex Preddy are dead is because they ginned up these people into demagogic fits of rage. It's essentially kind of taken the Hamas martyrdom complex and taking it to the American home front. They're trying to use these people as martyrs. It's like death pornography, really. It's awful. It's absolutely awful. And again, a young man lost his life, someone who I didn't agree with politically, obviously, but it's still tragic. He had siblings, parents, et cetera there. And ultimately, really, the blood really, in this case, is on the hands, I think, of Tim Walz, Keith Ellison, and these demagogues who riled up people like Alex Preddy.
And it's funny that this is happening in Minneapolis when ICE is operating throughout the country, and they are deporting a lot more people from places like Texas than Minnesota. And we're not seeing those issues there because law enforcement is cooperating instead of obstructing. And of course, Minneapolis and Minnesota, the entire state of Minnesota has been caught up in an unprecedented fraud scandal. And we're not talking about that anymore, are we, Josh? The focus is entirely on ICE and these protests. Now, we've seen more healthcare professionals fired for posting unhinged rants online, threatening to harm political opponents. Most people would call that domestic terrorism. Among the latest to be sacked is Melinda Cook, a nurse anaesthetist from Virginia, who was fired because she posted videos of herself encouraging medical professionals to drug ICE agents with paralytic meds. And she also advised non-medical staff to do their bit to deliberately injure ICE agents.
Get on Tinder, get on Hinge, find these guys. They're around. They're an ICE agent, bring some X-Lax and put it in their drinks. Get them sick.
Get them sick, Josh. That's what she said. There appears to be a disproportionate number of sick, dangerously ideological people in the medical profession. And that's scary. These videos of nurses or others in the medical profession posting just really ugly, threatening stuff online are becoming all too common.
Yeah, someone apparently didn't read about the Hippocratic Oath when she went to nursing school, I suppose, right? I mean, the first rule, of course, medicine is famously to do no harm. I guess unless you're a leftist. I guess if you're a leftist, then the first rule sometimes actually is do harm. If you're a leftist, maybe the very first rule actually is to cheer on the assassination of my late friend Charlie Kirk. If you're a leftist, maybe your first rule is to cheer on the near assassination of Donald J. Trump. If you're a leftist, maybe your first instinct is to start naming your babies Luigi after Luigi Mangione, this anarchist who shot dead a father and a husband in cold blood, a point-blank range, simply for being the CEO of a healthcare company there. And now astoundingly, Luigi Mangione is actually going to avoid the death penalty. To me, it's utterly astounding there. I mean, there's something deeply sick. There's something deeply sick in the American leftist mentality. And I think that the media bears a shockingly high part of the blame for this, because they have spent years and years and years communicating this message that their political opposition is not someone to be amicably debated with, but is an existential threat. How many times have we heard this? A threat to democracy, a threat to the rule of law, a threat to the Constitution. They're a threat to all of us there. Take matters into your own hands and do whatever is necessary to make this right there. That's how you end up with videos like this. That's how you end up with all these outrageous elementary school teachers who are having their children read celebrations of Charlie Kirk's murder. It's sick, sick stuff, Rita. And I asked the same question that I've been asking for a long time about the rise of political violence, which is, where are the leaders on the Democrat side of the aisle, these senior statesmen who can look at videos like this and say, enough, this is way too far there. I haven't seen that yet. And I haven't seen them because probably there's no one capable of giving that speech at this time, which says all you need to know about the state of that party.
Well, when you're characterising ICE agents as modern day fascists and Nazis and whipping up that sort of fear and hysteria, you're not going to speak out against this, are you? You're creating more of this.
Yeah.